Hey there, guys. Welcome to my Persona 5 retrospective. This is going to be a little bit different than a lot of the retrospectives I've done before because this one has a point. A lot of the other ones is just sort of my thoughts and theories whenever I beat a game, but there's a very specific line of thoughts I'm going to kind of walk down here. For the most part, when I finished up Persona 5, I gave my, real quick theories, but in looking at some other things afterwards, there's one specific argument that I want to... I don't know if I want to refute it, but I want to discuss it. And that is, a lot of people really question whether or not the Phantom Thieves were in the moral rightness in being with what they did. And that's a valid question, kind of. So, let me kind of, it's going to take us a while to get there, but when you beat the game, and you're having your exit interview with Sai at the police station, Sai makes a line that I noted when I first saw it, and I've had a lot more time to re-examine it. And that line is that...
A thief who justly stole the hearts of others, and a criminal who controlled them for his own gain. It seems your destiny has been tied to Shido's for some time, and now it's finally
That's
settled.
true. I mean, the biggest reason we found someone else that needed help.
Doesn't this seem a little too perfect? It's almost as though someone
Well,
planned it all.
they indirectly did by sending both me and Akechi loose in the world. It's a question of everything seems too coincidental, everything seems like someone set everything up. And that someone can either be Igor or it can be Yaldabaoth. We do know that Yaldabaoth was running a competition for the fate of mankind, where he basically set up the protagonist and he set up Akechi. Akechi sort of represented the desire of mankind to destroy, whereas we represent the desire of mankind to save. So, that whole thing, like, everything set this up. Shido and I were kind of set in a collision path long ago, because obviously both Shido, was connected to me because of what happened, and Shido was connected to Akechi. This was very intentionally done. But that made me think, is there more that Yaldabaoth did? How much of the plot was kind of set up and designed by the God of Control? Because he is the God of Control, The Phantom Thieves would have fizzled out, except Yaldabaoth put Shido in a position to run into us at the buffet. After our first, it was either our first or our second job, but he put us in a position where we're like, we need to keep going out and we need to keep, trying to purify the world. And if Shido hadn't been there, we may have just stopped. So, just where all is Yaldabaoth touching the, narrative of the game that goes through? Well, very quickly when I started thinking about that, I realized that one of the, Yaldabaoth was in control of mementos. And one of the things that happened right before the game started is that Morgana mentioned that palaces didn't used to exist, and they all just sort of popped up very recently, but right as the game was getting started. So, being that people were taken out of mementos, which was the kind of universal prison, and put into their own palaces, Yaldabaoth definitely seems like that he had a hand in that. It seems like the palaces were designed by Yaldabaoth specifically. So what does that mean? Does putting someone in a palace cause them to become more evil? Is that why society was as messed up as it was? Is because Yaldabaoth intentionally set up a situation where there would be, certain people willing to walk over corpses to get what they wanted, specifically in order to make society at this kind of tipping point and see whether Akechi or I emerged? And the answer is kind of, but not really. We're going to look at Kamoshida first. Kamoshida is the first boss you run into, and is really sort of the trial case for what we're really getting into here, what we're talking about. And Kamoshida very quickly dismisses the idea that Yaldabaoth is ultimately the one that's making everyone evil, because Kamoshida had broken Ryuji's legs well before the game ever started. Ryuji very much wants to go after Kamoshida because of that incident, and so the player is introduced to that bit of history between the two characters, so there's no way that Kamoshida was just this stand-up great guy until, Yaldabaoth put a palace up. he was always, always, always corrupt and evil. I was trying to find a better word than evil, and then I couldn't. However, take a look at Kamoshida's confession, because it says some pretty interesting things.
I have repeatedly done things that were unbecoming of a teacher. Verbally abusing students, physically abusing my team, and sexually harassing female students. I am the reason why Shiho Suzui tried to kill herself. I did horrible things to Takamaki-san as well. In return for giving Suzui-san a position on the team, I tried to force her into having relations.
Did you notice how it started with, I have been doing, I've been an abusive teacher, I've been, sexually harassing female students, very, very general statements. I've been doing this stuff for a long time. And we know that's true. The physical abuse is why Ryuji's legs got broken. But then, he got very specific. He is the reason that Shiho tried to kill herself. And he tried to blackmail An into having a relation with him, which, first of all, we don't exactly know specifically what he did with Shiho. I don't think that's ever explicitly said. We don't know if he straight up raped her or if there was just molestation happening. I mean, it was obviously way more than just sexual harassment that caused Shiho to try to kill herself. I don't think we know specifically what happened, but what he was doing with Anne was basically a blackmail into rape situation. It's a degree further than anything that had come before. The fact that he said, hey, for a long time I've been doing these things, the physical abuse and the harassment. Oh, and also here recently, I tried to blackmail Anne and I caused Shiho to try and kill herself. That tells me that the event with An and Shiho was significantly beyond anything that had come before. And of course, the event with An and Shiho was after the palace was erected. That tells me that once the palace came up, Kamoshida got worse. But does that stay consistent? Is that the same way for all the other bosses? Let's look. With Madarame's confession, we don't actually see the same, and recently I did this. However, when we look at Madarame's history, we do actually see a change in his behavior. For years, ever since Yusuke was a kid, Madarame had a lot of students. Madarame would help them, but he would just kind of be like, oh, I don't have any inspiration, and he would, take pieces of their art and claim it as his own. But he still had ongoing pupils. It was only recently that Madarame suddenly drove every single pupil out of his house, except for the one that couldn't leave. Yusuke didn't have the option of getting out of the house. He had nowhere to go. But everyone that was able to leave did. Why is that? And the why of that is never really answered in the game, but it's very telling that for some reason, Madarame, the way Madarame worked for at least 10 or 15 years. I don't know how old Yusuke was when his mom died, but he was obviously a near infant, and now he's, 16, 17 years old. So, for at least 14, 15 years, 16, 17 years, Madarame was able to keep pupils. He was able to keep his house full of talent. And then all of a sudden, for no discernible reason, everyone that could leave left. Madarame became completely unreasonable and unable to work with. That's very unique. That's very interesting. Kaneshiro, same sort of thing. Kaneshiro was a mob boss. He was a member of the Yakuza. He obviously wasn't a good guy. But all of a sudden, here, right as the game is starting, he puts into place this new scheme where he's going to blackmail kids en masse in order to extort money from their parents, in order to, have them sell themselves into the sex trade just to get him more money, more money, more money, more money, more money. He had never done that before, and we know that because the rumor was just starting to circulate when Makoto heard about it. If this had been something that had been happening for a long time, there wouldn't be a rumor, it would be kind of established fact. But no, this was something he was just starting up. That's why they were pushing it so aggressively. If it had been a long-term thing, they wouldn't be like scouring for every student they could find. They would have found everyone that went there long ago. So again, we see Kaneshiro suddenly having a much more aggressive scheme to fulfill his desires right after he gets a palace. Futaba is a little bit harder to talk about because she obviously wasn't evil, but we do again see a change in her personality. Initially, Futaba was just a shut-in. She was, she had had a difficult experience, and so she'd gone back to her room, didn't want to go to school, relied on Sojourner to take care of her, but she still had a life to live. She formed Medjed, which was a hacktivist group. She was going around, she was trying to expose corporate scandals, and she was trying to bring the truth of things to life. And then all of a sudden, a little bit, right as the game is starting, or to be fair, we don't know when it happened exactly, but at some point, she just completely lost the will to keep going. She began to see her, the room she was in as a tomb. She completely abandoned Medjed, just dropped it, didn't even arrange for who was in control of it. She just didn't care. And so again, at some point, right as the game is beginning, Futaba has a fairly significant change in her personality. Akumura, same thing. Akumura has been in charge of Akumura Foods for a long time, has been overworking his employees for quite a while. But then, all of a sudden, Akumura decides, completely at random apparently, that he wants to get into politics and becomes insufferable. There's riots going on. People are throwing rocks into the Akumura headquarters. His palace gets torn down. Or not his palace, a statue of him gets torn down overnight. There's just, news broadcasts are talking about just the plight of the workers and all of the complaints that are going on. Something changed. And Shido, no exception there either. Shido was this completely unknown politician, not even a member of either of the major parties, and just comes out of nowhere. It's sort of just a middling along politician, probably taking bribes, probably not, the most upstanding guy. But then all of a sudden, Shido's like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and run for prime minister. Guy that's not associated with either party just decides he's going to be prime minister. Out of nowhere. So, in each case, we have people that are bad people, except for Futaba, of course. Oh, I also miss Sai. Sai is difficult because, unlike everyone else, Sai didn't have her heart change. So it's really hard to gauge how Sai changed. Because we don't see a before or after with her. She decides to become a good person by herself, which is awesome, but it's really hard to adjust. However, we do have Makoto's testimony. Testimony, yes, this is a trial now. We do have Makoto, and we see her interaction with Makoto, and we see, initially, she sees it as her duty in order to make sure Makoto's okay. And then as the game goes on, it shifts, and all of a sudden, Sai is just like, yeah, I'm really busy at work, I'm not going to come home for a while, take care of yourself. Complete, small, but complete reversal to what she thought her job was at the beginning of the game versus what it ends up being at the end, where she just sees, well, I don't have time for Makoto anymore, my job is everything. So, in each case, we do see a development of the way that the characters interact with the world, the way the characters view what is important to them. At the end of the day, what this means to me is that the reason that the characters were the way they were, the reason that Kamoshida is so overwhelmingly bad, is not just because he's a terrible person, which he is, but because the erection of the palace caused his twisted desire, lust, to become all-encompassing. Everything Kamoshida did had to feed his desire, to be revered, to feed his desire for the world to respect and love him. It's weird, Kamoshida is almost more prideful than lustful, I think, but whatever. And that's the way each of them end up being. So, one of the complaints, and again, I didn't say this before, this kind of came out of some discussion I had with Golden Beast. Golden Beast always at the end of games we have a really good debate back and forth, because we both look at the game and we both see things and mostly agree on things, but not quite. And it really forces me to go back and establish why things are. The reason why the villains in this game are just so overwhelmingly bad isn't because they have poor character, but because the way the plot is worked out and the way, especially with Kamoshida, they needed an overwhelmingly evil person, because at the end of the first palace, you had to be willing to kill him. Because we didn't actually know whether or not changing his heart would result in, what that would really do. It was possible he would just die. So, I fully understand why it was, and then the way they built the plot, I firmly have the belief that it's not just that everyone in the game is just the spawn of Satan himself, because that is really boring. I've frequently talked about how disappointing it is when the villains in the game are not understandable. But looking at the plot as a whole, I think that's why they are so bad, is because specifically Yaldabaoth was forcing their entire life to encircle their obsession. Because he is the god of control. So there's that. And that brings us to whether or not what the Phantom Thieves did is morally okay. Because let's face it, the Phantom Thieves are kind of going in and doing a, psychic surgery in order to cut out a desire they don't like. That's really, really, really similar to, lobotomies. You know what? You're dangerous, so we're just going to cut out this part of you because it's concerning to us. That's really, really high-end stuff. And it's concerning. However, looking at it with this explanation, which I think is the correct explanation, means the Phantom Thieves aren't just going into their psyche and taking out, an aspect of the personality that they find distasteful. It's they are undoing what Yaldabaoth did. Yaldabaoth made this palace and caused this person to completely fixate on this desire. The Phantom Thieves are taking that desire, bringing down the palace, and restoring the person who they were before. Or at least that's the intention. I do have to say one of the issues is that you don't restore them to how they were before. Kamoshida doesn't suddenly go, holy shit, I was trying to rape a girl, and confess to that. No, he confesses to everything. He confesses to all the stuff he did before the palace even existed. And that is a little... At the end of the day, we do definitely run into a situation where we aren't restoring them to how they were, we are making them, finger quotes, better. But do we have the moral authority to decide how someone should be? That's a very, very deep and interesting question. It's kind of, if you guys have ever watched the Clockwork Orange, I know I brought this Clockwork Orange up once in the Let's Play as well, that's the question at the heart of Clockwork Orange, and it's a really super interesting question to think about. But where I end up with at the end is, if we decide the Phantom Thieves don't have the right to undo Yaldabaoth's palace and try and, restore them closer to their original personality, albeit without any trace of the desire, rather than simply removing the all-consumingness of that desire, what do we want them to do? Because unfortunately, they are left with, they are in a position where they only have three options. They can do nothing and allow Kamoshida to continue raping and causing people to commit suicide, continue abusing people, continue harassing people. That seems monstrously unethical. They can straight up murder Kamoshida, or they can undo what Yaldabaoth did, albeit that will cause Kamoshida to completely lose an aspect of his personality. There are some people that probably think, murder is the more appropriate one, but I've got to say, I don't agree. I don't think Kamoshida deserves to die. I think the ideal way of dealing with the situation would be to, the ideal way would be to just undo what Yaldabaoth did, but I don't think that's really an option. And of the three options that are actually there, I do agree with where the game is having the Phantom Thieves go. I do agree that of the situations available, restoring, undoing his obsession with his twisted desire is better than either murdering him or leaving him to hurt other people willy-nilly. So, I do like the Phantom Thief concept, although the biggest issue is that I think it needed to be discussed. Yes, there was some discussion, primarily from Akechi, of what they are doing is effectively playing God, but I don't really feel like the society did a lot of discussing of is this okay? Are the Phantom Thieves just? But the Phantom Thieves themselves never really questioned themselves. You never had every once in a while after, someone, we change someone's heart, it's like, is this really the right thing to do? And the main character would be like, yes. Or it had to be done. But it never really got the attention it deserved. It's a big moral question, and even though, for myself, I don't feel like what the Phantom Thieves did was wrong, I do think the game would have benefited from a little bit closer evaluation of that. As it was, it just sort of felt like they were like, yes, we're fine. And that was as far as it went. So, that's the way I explain the game to myself. That's how my headcanon for it works. And it leaves me in a pretty good place. It leaves me respecting the game. But I do understand people that are just like, I cannot get by. What they're doing is effectively brainwashing. And I can understand that hesitation, although I don't see a better path they had available, if that makes sense. Other than that, guys, I will see you all in the next one.